Hello everyone, I'm going to be covering some changes coming up on the 9.17.1 patch. Now this is on the test server. Do keep in mind some of these changes aren't finalized. They might change in the second iteration of the test and before they hit the live server. Now, a lot of these changes aren't too drastic, but for some tanks, they might, either provide further buffs or don't, put these buffs in place as much as they are currently. Now I did touch on the German heavy tanks in a previous video that you can find on my YouTube channel. This is going to be for some German medium tanks, German TDs, and a few other tanks that they're providing some changes for. I'm going to start out there with currently on the test server they added some new premium tanks to the tech tree. The VK4503 and also the PZ58 Mutts. I hope they add them in. Who knows if they actually do though? Only because if you kind of look at it, they have the M4A2E4 on here as well. It just might be one of those things. They could add this in, but it might be something specific for the Russian server, and like the NA and EU servers don't get it. So I wouldn't get your hopes up there, but you can still be hopeful. Anyway, I'm going to start. I don't own the E50, but I am going to start out with the E50 here. That's getting some changes. It's getting some pretty good buffs to its, which they have changed the comparison here. You can add in crew skills, you can add in equipment, pretty much anything you could imagine. You can even add in camouflage here for paint. So this actually makes the in-game comparison tool probably better than everything else that you can find, because everything is accurate and correct. But I'm gonna outfit the 10.5 centimeter. They buff the 8.8, both of them on the E50, some gun handling, raid load time buffs. 10.5 still going to be the best gun for the majority of people, but I'm mainly just going to touch on here. Even the 10.5 centimeter gets a buff to its gun depression. As far as the patch notes, it basically says it changes the depression of angles on all guns, on all turrets, from 5 degrees to 8 degrees. That's a pretty good change for the E50, and it doesn't just tie to the 8.8 centimeter. So that's going to be a welcome change for a lot of people here. As far as other changes, like I said, I went over the high tier German heavy tank changes. But I'm going to next up start with the Panther, because that gets finally a new gun. Currently the top gun on this, which let me add this to the comparison just to bring up, this is a welcome sight for a lot of people, currently myself as well, because I am grinding the Panther to get the 8.8 centimeter L100 gun over the L71 as its top gun. It is another module to grind, but comparing the two, you get more penetration. As far as damage per minute goes, you do lose a little bit of damage per minute, but you get much better accuracy. It's a welcome change because the Panther 2 kind of needs, some sort of better gun on it than it currently has, because it's kind of frustrating playing it right now. So that's going to be a very welcome sight for people currently grinding the Panther 2, or even that like the Panther 2. It's another gun for you to kind of fiddle around with. Now, there's a slew of changes for the test server. I'm not going to touch on all of them, only because, the video would be freaking like over a half hour long just talking about every little change that you're going to find on the test server. But more or less, just going over a few things, they pretty much change every single tank in mid tiers for Germans, as far as accuracy, some penetration buffs, some aiming time buffs. If you want specifics for them, I would definitely look in the patch notes for them. You can find them on every single World of Tanks portal. The main changes you're going to find though that are going to stick out to me the most, like the E50, the Leopard prototype gets a gun depression buff from -6 to -8 degrees. That's a pretty big change for that tank. And looking at other medium tanks, the Indian Panzer gets a buff to its gun. That's going to be something that people are really going to appreciate for that tank, because it's not the best tank right now. And looking at mid-tier tanks, which, I recently just ground through a lot of these tanks, mainly the VKs here, even the Panther that gets a little buff to its gun. As far as the reload time, a lot of these tanks get buffs to their top speed, to their mobility, a bit to their reload time, gun handling, and penetration on a lot of the 8.8 centimeter and some of the 7.5 centimeter, I think, guns as well. So really, it's a lot of buffs across the board for German tanks. Even the Tiger 1 here, looking at its gun, the 8.8 centimeter, it gets some penetration buffs, I believe, for its APCR round, and I think its reload actually buffs up a little bit too. Essentially, it's premium round. It's for the 8.8 centimeter though. Wrong gun. Tiger 1 though, for people grinding it, that's going to help out, but it does get some buffs to its mantlet armor. Now, I'm going to focus on a couple other main changes here. Like I said, I'm not going to go into every specific one here because a lot of the buffs, they're just small little tweaks, mainly to gun handling, accuracy, a little bit of reload, but they're going to make German mid-tiers, since they are, pretty much some of the oldest tanks in the game, for a lot of them, they're going to make them a little bit more up to speed with the current, balancing of the game, which is very nice. But what you're going to find here that a lot of people are probably not too happy about with the Grille is it gets a slight change to its tank. So essentially the reload time on it, now the stats here are a little bit different because it has 100% crew. I'm pretty sure that the comparison here takes that into account. And I'm looking at the patch notes, and those values are a little bit off, but essentially it's going to get a slight nerf to its reload time by 1.5 seconds, it looks like. And it's going to get a further change to its gun depression, as you can see here. It used to be -8, now it's -7. As far as its mobility goes, you have its reverse speed. That goes from 20 down to 15. And its engine power here, 850, it got nerfed from 900. So it's a little bit of a nerf to the tank. A lot of people are going to be angry about that. Honestly, though, it's still not going to change its role. It's just going to hurt it a little bit with being too strong closer up, because they nerf a little bit to its mobility, a little bit to its gun depression, which hurts it fighting in areas where people are spotting you because you're a smaller target with more gun depression. And the DPM does hurt a bit, but at the same time, it's still going to fulfill its role as kind of a long-range support sniper tank. They could have honestly nerfed it a little bit more. Not that I think it needs it too much, but they could have nerfed it even more, and it still would be a pretty, pretty decent tank. Now, another little change since they buffed the E100's gun here. I just want to preview this tank, and never mind. I was about to say I gotta go in a different way here. The 12 on the Waffle Trager PZ4, the L38 gun here. Its penetration gets changed a little bit as far as its standard round, because essentially this is the same gun more or less than what's on the E100. They buffed that penetration up from 235, and that's going to 246. So you're going to see a buff on that tank. Now, some other tanks to glance over here, because it's not all about the German tanks. You are going to be rejoicing if you play the T28 prototype, the T28, and the T95. Starting with the T95, it finally gets a boost. Let me pull these tanks up here in the comparison. That way it's a little bit easier to go over them pretty quickly. You just take the Grille out of here. But as far as the mobility goes, because that's really what it touches on, to reverse speed, they kind of get changed a little bit. But it's mainly with the top speeds here. T95, that goes, as far as its top speed, from 13 kilometers currently on the live server, that goes all the way up to 20. Now, hitting that might be a little bit difficult because its engine is a little bit weak for its weight. But on level ground, it should be able to reach that, and it's just going to be going up hills, it'll probably still be about, you know, slow as hell. But it also gets a slight buff to its reverse speed, up from 6 to 10. T28 itself, you know, not the prototype, but the regular T28 goes from 18 to 22 kilometers an hour, and 7 reverse to 10. So again, that's pretty good. And both of these tanks do receive some traverse speeds buffs for both of its tracks, so that'll help out with turning with, you know, the blazing fast speeds it now can travel. The T28 prototype, that gets a pretty significant speed boost as well. That's up to 28 kilometers an hour from 18, and 7 to 10 for its reverse. It doesn't get any changes to its traverse rate though. So rejoice. That's going to be awesome. Now let's see what other main changes. The T3485M, like I'm reading off the patch notes here, more or less. The T3485M gets some very nice buffs. That tank kind of needs it. It's one of those premiums that, you know, you kind of felt bad for it at times compared to some of the newer premiums that came out. Now, there's also some changes to the Centurion tanks. If I can pull them up here really quick, or what am I doing? I freaking own the Centurion tanks. Duh. Alright, I do not want German tanks. There we go. Let's get these two tanks up here, which again, I mentioned it in my other video, they're kind of improving the UI again. You can see if you have ace tankers, stuff like that on your tanks. Your win rate, I believe, too. The Centurion Mark 1 now, looking at, whoops, this is not the Centurion Mark 1. I sold the Centurion Mark 1. So let's start with the Centurion MK7. You know, the 105 here, it's getting a, you know, decent boost to its gun. They're changing the reload time with the top turret from 12 seconds to 11.2 seconds, you know, with a completely stock crew, no equipment on it. And the top speed goes from 40 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour here. So that's a pretty well received change. And the Centurion Mark 1, that honestly, like, I was surprised they buffed the tier 9 here. The Mark 1 at tier 8, that gets a buff to its top gun. The reload drops by 0.5 seconds. And that also receives a top speed boost from 40 to 50. So they'll actually be able to hit that pretty decently, I feel like, on decent terrain and level ground. And the FV4202 also receives that. Not that that's going to see too much because it's pretty sluggish because of its engine, but regardless, going down hills, it'll see it. Some other little changes, you know, the Kruppster Waffeltrager, the premium tier 7, that gets a buff to its horsepower. You know, there's some other, looking at here, some changes like to the Tiger P I didn't glance over, and some penetration for some other 8.8 centimeter gun on the VK3601H, the Jagdpanzer 4, Jagdpanther. You know, there's just so many changes. You know, it's better just to look at the patch notes for specifics, but the main other changes I wanted to cover here are going to be, let me see, with the Japanese tanks. I guess I could have just hopped into the Type 4 Heavy here. As far as these tanks go, they are getting some new guns. Like, let me research that here, since I have plenty of free experience to blow through, since it's on the test server. But they're receiving some pretty, whoops, I don't want to do that, pretty nice guns, which, you know, you don't have to use them, but, you know, at least on the Type 4 Heavy here, you know, you're going to have a new 15 centimeter gun and also a 14 centimeter from before. Now, comparing the two tanks, as you see, the 15 centimeter gun only has access to 2 HE shells, which is pretty, you know, different for a tank at this tier. Now, the premium one, I'm not sure, you know, with them wanting to kind of rebalance the game a little bit, you know, the premium one does more damage. So running this tank with the stock HE rounds, you know, it's technically, all right, since, it's not a bad penetrating shell for HE at this tier. Like 75 is the best, but at the same time, let me get to this screen here. As far as the purchase costs go, 1,300, it's pretty expensive. But once you pop up to 6,400 for the more damage, they're almost like forcing you to use the premium rounds to get the full experience of this tank. Now, will a lot of people use this gun? Possibly. Like, honestly, I think it could be a little bit better off, because comparing it to, if I can find Hobie before it, you compare it to its 15 centimeter gun here. It does receive more damage even if you are using the standard round. This one 910, duh. So more damage, same penetration. Rate of fire though is lower. That's the main thing that I almost feel like bumping up a tier. It should get a little bit better rate of fire. And then on the Type 5 heavy here, shit. Here's the 15 centimeter for that gun. Does get slightly better rate of fire, better accuracy, but again, like, I like that they're giving people choices, but at the same time, it's I don't know. I feel like this is going to be one of the guns where before it releases, they might buff the rate of fire just a pinch. They're probably going to keep the accuracy about the same, but I do think it needs a little bit more rate of fire. And honestly, I'm kind of disappointed that they added in. To me, it would have been easier for them just to add in a premium HE round that essentially had, say, 100 millimeters of penetration or 125, something like that. And maybe even a faster velocity. I don't know why they went with the more damage. It's just 300 damage, but it does make a pretty significant difference. And then they also buffed the armor to these tanks, which, more or less the changes that you're going to see for the type here. I'm trying to pull it up over on this side. The changes that you're going to find with these tanks are, it's pretty significant that you're going to find armor-wise. As far as the whole armor, it's 270 here on the test server. Previously, it was 260, and you're going to find that across the front here. And they buffed this current side armor here on the Japanese heavy tank, even the Type 5 and the Type 4 heavy. Between the two of them, it was a pretty well-known weak spot that people utilized, and they finally patched that up a bit. Essentially it's just going to continue the 270 millimeters of armor around. Instead of it, previously it was 210 on the Type 5 heavy. And then side armor, I don't think you really see too much of a change there. But as far as, it doesn't look like a lot, but previously it was 140 millimeters, and that's going up to 160 on the sides. And then as far as the armor beneath it goes, that continues, it's still 140. I'm just looking off to the side here, sorry guys. It does receive more, essentially 160 here, which that's what shows up on the side, but 140 beneath that in the space armor. That used to be 105. So that's going to allow the type to angle just a pinch. You're not going to want to angle a lot, because say unlike the mouse, this is still a pretty weak spot for high tiers to go through if it's not at an auto bounce angle. And then, outside of those changes, it doesn't receive too many changes outside, say like on its turret, stuff like that, but buffs to the whole armor. It's going to be, pretty significant, especially for the Type 5. The Type 4, if I can find that again, that receives, pretty much the same changes across that tank. It receives a slight buff to its whole armor, but specifically to these cheeks here, which is going to help a lot, because that's the main problem that Type 4 and 5 heavy drivers find right now is, they might be caught just like this. And even though the rest of your armor is excellent, they just shoot these little cheeks. So that's going to be nice, but it remains to be seen if these guns are going to be useful. who really knows if that happens, or if they're if they're going to change it before the actual live server goes. Finally, last but not least, I know this is going to be, I plan on updating my weak spot guide for this on wattguru.com. The changes to the T110E5. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. I honestly think they should have nerfed the lower plate a little bit, but going with the cupola, it's definitely keeping its frontal armor extremely good. But people were kind of complaining that they're nerfing their tank and this and that. But primarily the changes that you're going to find on the T110E5 come with the cupola, and then there's a little side piece I'll point out too. But before, the cupola was pretty damn hard to penetrate outside of some really, essentially the flat areas on the front. They're changing it so the center area, it's going to be 209.5 millimeters thick, like kind of a center little trapezoid almost. And that's going to have about 245 millimeters of effective armor. And then as you progress to the outside, it's going to drop from that to 184 millimeters and 139 as you get out to the edges. Now, a lot of the armor viewers that you see, unfortunately, they take into account the vertical angle, but not the horizontal angle. So what a lot of people are freaking out about is like it's showing up as 196 effective armor, 167, 157, stuff like that, which seems pretty weak. And even down to like 215 and stuff. Essentially, the right side here appears weaker than the left side. But as far as some horizontal angles going on, it's still going to be pretty strong, and your best chances still are going to be to shoot at the center here. It does open up a couple little weak areas towards the bottom where you don't have those rounded edges. And mainly this area here where it's not as thick is going to be the weak spot that people are going to aim for. Because right once you get to the center, it bumps up in thickness. But it's still going to be strong. It's going to be basically nearly impossible for Tier 8s to penetrate it reliably. Tier 9s will even struggle. Tier 10, eventually light tanks, some mediums, heavies, they'll even bounce off of it. But, clean shots will penetrate it now. They didn't touch the lower plate, but on the side here, they did finally change just to make, essentially sometimes when you have an E5, showing its side and you shoot right here, you used to catch essentially the beak armor here. It's very thick in the center, as many of you know, and it kind of used to spill around here, and it was very thick in this area. They nerfed that heavily. That dropped all the way from let's see, 254 millimeters down to 76 like the rest of the side. So it'll make shooting, essentially if you're looking from the side, this area a lot easier to penetrate an E5. You no longer have a gigantic chunk of the frontal thick armor. So it's a minor nerf, but it does provide some bounces here or there. But screw you, Windows 10. Stop freaking reminding me about the Super Bowl. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, that's most of the changes. Like I said, for a lot of the German tanks, I'm not gonna point out the specifics of them. You're better off looking at the patch notes. This video is already 23 minutes long, but pretty significant changes coming, mainly for the German tanks. They kind of needed it in a way. A lot of the mid tiers got buffed, and a lot of people are focusing on the end tiers. But a lot of the mid tier tanks, those little buffs they're getting are going to make them pretty fun to play. Like I already enjoy the VK3002M, 3002D, and that's getting a buff to its speed and gun handling, I believe, and its premium round gets a little bit better. It's going to be even more fun there. But anyway, thanks again for watching. I don't even know what hell I'm in the FUM clan. Thanks again for watching. Like I said, you should take a look at the patch notes if you want more specifics. I'd still be rattling off German accuracy changes at this point. And like I said, these changes, a lot of them will stick. A couple of them I kind of pointed out might change, like the Japanese heavy guns. I think they're going to get buffed a little bit with the HE rounds. And I don't really like that the damage is higher on the premium, but thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll catch you on one of my live streams here on YouTube. Otherwise, hopefully enjoy the patch and have a good day.